Good afternoon. Welcome back to another rendition of the B&H virtual event space. You are tuned into Microphone Techniques. We have our engineer expert panel brought to you by Sennheiser and Neumann. And we brought a couple experts out here today. You already know this right now, but I'm not one of them. So I'm going to let them do most of the talking today. I'm going to be here just to direct the traffic and just be a nice smiling face on camera when they talk shop. So we'll get it started. I do want to say that we are going to be answering any questions that you guys have. So if you guys do have any questions, no matter what type of audio stuff we end up talking about, get your audio questions in. We're going to have a couple of our guys from behind the boards answering questions. I want to send a huge thank you to Zach and Chris from Sennheiser and Neumann. They're going to be behind the screen there answering questions, hiding from us. But as far as our on-camera talent today, we have some wonderful people. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they're going to do a much better job of it than I do. So, Phil, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Fela. I'm the owner of One of One Production Studio. We specialize in podcasting, but we also track full bands, drums. We have upright piano, stuff like that. I've been an audio engineer for 20 years. I started out as a front of house audio engineer for about the first 17, 18, and I still dabble in it. But mostly now I'm in the studio, and I'm also a gear reviewer for Mix Magazine. So I'm excited to talk some shop with you guys.
Awesome. Well, we want to thank you for coming on. And see, I know I was going to mess up somebody's name. Fela, I'm going to lock that in. I'm good for it at least one every session.
Uh,
Chris, what's going on, man? Where are you coming to us from?
Hey there, how's it going? Yeah, I'm Chris Egert, and I am a full-time sound designer, working in the game industry for about 10 years now. Kind of started off like probably a lot of you all did in music, and then sort of made my way out to the West Coast in LA and got my feet into the game world, and now mostly do game audio full-time. And I
Awesome.
also have my own home studio here, where we do a lot of recording and mixing and mastering.
I was going to say, I thought I had a nice home set up, but you have me beat. And Chris has also, he didn't say this, but he's worked in 90% of the cities in the United States, apparently, right? Something like that. Will, what's going on? Tell us a little bit
Hey,
about yourself.
what's up? My name is Will Yip. I'm a producer. I'm just a music collaborator. I don't like to really kind of pigeonhole to like what role I have. I just grew up loving music. I'm just a music fan. I'm a song fan. I grew up loving hip hop and hardcore, and I just got into it. I went to play. I grew up as a drummer, and I became, Lauryn Hill's drummer for a little bit, and toured around the world with her, doing some engineering, building her studio in her house. And while, working at the studio of my dreams here at Studio 4 in Conshohocken, PA, right outside Philly. And yeah, and getting to tour around the world and meet a lot of bands. And I got really lucky producing a few very, very cool punk bands. And I kind of haven't stopped in the last 20 years. I've been making records every single day for 14 hours a day. And yeah, I feel very lucky. And, a couple years ago, I got to start my own indie record label called Memory Music. And that's been a big passion of mine. And so I like to think, we just do a bit of everything here. We make music, we put out the records. Yeah, we just kind of do everything. We just want to help, great artists, build their records. That's it.
Awesome. Well, I personally want to thank all you guys for coming on. I mean, I love when we have a nice star-studded cast that can take the weight off my shoulders, because I get nervous during these things, especially when I don't, it's one thing if I'm talking about something that's in my wheelhouse.
Dude, I'm so nervous. I don't know why I'm so nervous, because I do all these podcasts and things all the time. But I think I get so nervous because I love tech and I love gear. And I feel like working in like hardcore and punk, you never get looked at as being like a cool gear person. People want like the nerdy dudes, they want like the cool, clean, whatever. So I feel like I never had like love from like the technical side of things. I had like cool sponsorship with like Bud Light and like Liquid Death and like all stuff, but like I never got to work with like cool audio companies until recently. So yeah, I'm very grateful that I get to explore this side of the world. And because I grew up loving gear, and really, like we all are, just gear nerds, but the gear has inspired so many of my records, and I'm sure everyone's work here.
Now,
That's a heck of a microphone you got there too. What is that, Will?
This is a Neumann 149.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, I swear I didn't put this up just because of the Neumann Sennheiser event. I use this mic every day. I'm inherently a pretty lazy person, so I just leave a mic up because we do vocals every single day, and this mic is just up. This has been my dream mic, my favorite mic in the last few years.
what is it
ever
about?
since-
What is it about the mic?
All right, I'll get into it. So going
He's
back,
gonna wax poetic.
so going back, I've loved Neumann mics since I started making music. Since I worked at my first studio when I was 15, and the engineer I was interning for was like, "Yo, you ever watch the Howard Stern show? Like, check out his voice on that mic. Yeah, it's amazing. I don't know what mic is that?" I looked it up. I was like, "Oh, that's a 103 on the show, on the OG show," and I chased that mic. I saved all my pennies. I was a broke kid from North Philly. You know what I mean? So I saved up every penny I had to get this mic when I was like 19, and I used it on everything. And then I linked up with Miss Lauren Hill, and this was when she was playing her comeback. Not comeback, just like her ready to do music for people again. And she had every company send her mics. I'm telling you, every single mic showed up at her door. Everyone. I'm not going to call out what they are because I'm no snitch, but one of the special ones was a brand new 149, because she used to love the OG M49. She loved the original 49s. And we literally shot out about 35 mics, like lined them up, shot them out. It took days. It was crazy. And the 149 was the winner. It was my favorite mic, leaps and bounds. And I said, when I can afford it, when one day I'm lucky enough to be able to work with that mic for myself, I'm getting that damn mic. And when I linked up with Noam a couple years ago, I got a 149, and it's taken over the studio. It's my go-to mic. It does everything well. A dude screaming into it. It handles high SPL so well, but also handles a very breathy falsetto from a female or a male vocal. It does everything. The range is kind of crazy on it, and it takes a beating while still being as delicate as possible. So it's been my kind of go-to.
Now we got to go around the room, because now I want to. I
let's go.
got to see, Chris. What are you coming with us? What kind of mic?
I'm just using the 416 shotgun today, which is kind of my go-to for a lot of things, because in addition to music, obviously recording sound effects, I do a lot of field recording, and the 416 is sort of the de facto film and TV mic for field recording and capturing sound. Just has phenomenal rejection, and you can really focus on a sound, and it just always seems to work for Foley or vehicles or gunshots or whatever we kind of throw at it. It seems to work well. It's kind of interesting because it's not a mic I would usually grab in the studio for music stuff, but for sound effects and field recording, it's just the best.
It's like,
cool.
your voice is piercing my soul right now.
I was thinking today, though, like the first time that I came across a Neumann microphone, and when I was starting off, I was an assistant engineer at a post-production facility in New York City. And my very first day in the job, I got to be an assistant engineer in a session with Alfred Molina, who was Dr. Octopus from Spider-Man. And we mic'd him up with the U87, and the engineer was just kind of like, "All right, kid, get in there and mic him up," And I was like so terrified, because it was my first day. I don't want to screw anything up, and I was suddenly in a room with like a top tier AAA talent star, and a really expensive microphone that I'd never held before or done anything with before, other than like seeing it in studios or in videos. And it was just like such a cool moment in my career.
That's awesome.
So, and it's not, you don't get those moments very often, apparently. So, because most of the rest of my job there wasn't like that, but
it's just like
it's a great way to start
the little
out.
minutia.
Yeah. So that was the first time I ever set up and recorded with the Neumann mic, and it was a U87. And it was one of the vintage ones, probably from the 70s or 80s. And those obviously sound great. And yeah.
Awesome. Fela, what's your mic of choice?
My mic of choice, it kind of happened like William. I was doing a bunch of shootouts. Actually, it started when I was working for Claire Global. They had a shop out in Mount Vernon, New York. And I loved that job because I had got my hands on every microphone possible. And then at night, I did these crappy $50 a night gigs throughout the city and in Brooklyn. So I asked my boss, like, can I try out the mics? I just kind of, because my goal was to get to mixing front of house for them at some point, but I was just in the shop prepping all the gear and stuff. So nightly I would take out Sennheiser, Neumann's, just all the pencils, the 990, the 935 was the one that did it for me, because I can use it on male and female live, and it just went right through the mix. I could get the vocals nice and clear. I could pan and get stuff out of the way, and it just was so on point, and I didn't have to do a bunch of cutting mid-range, like I would have to do with other microphones. So that was when I realized, oh, this whole microphone thing is the way to really get, clear recordings. But then I was actually seeing what, whoever was mixing front of house for, Florence and the Machine, or even Gautier back in the day, just all these different artists and what their engineers were using for these top level performances that were, these mics were just on Good Morning America. And then that night they were at my $50 a night gig. It always made me chuckle, but it was how I got good at mixing front of house and knowing what I liked and what I didn't like from every mic. And Sennheiser, I loved everything they did, whether it was the drum mics to the guitar mics to, the tom mics that, sounded huge without me having to do too much as well. That was when, Sennheiser, Neumann got on my radar. But yeah, the 935 for me, because of my live sound background, was just like the game changer. I put every vocalist on that at least. And I'm into the jazz world as well. So the Neumann, the KSM, I'm blanking on the model number, but I use it on all the jazz singers. Super crisp, cuts through. That's my second choice of just when you really know how to sing.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's
I don't need to worry about that.
That's important.
Yeah. So
What-
but I mean, when you have like, people like Diane Reeves or Dee Dee Bridgewater, I never worried about it with them. But if I was doing a rock, kind of
you were at
like
the New
rock
Jersey hardcore
stuff.
show with Will.
Yeah, it would get bashed, unfortunately. But I mixed hardcore though. I mixed everything. I mean, when you're in New York, it's just
Get everything.
What is it like? How do you guys decide? Because this is something that to people like me who aren't involved in the audio world, it's like, okay, I can make the connection. A mic might pick up drums or guitar differently than voice, but when it gets down to different mics for different voices, because you guys have mentioned it, I've heard it come up kind of like a couple times, like male voice versus female or power vocals. Like, can we talk a little bit about that?
That's, I know there's a lot of guys and a lot of talented people, and it is a science, right? You want, this particular mic is going to be a perfect thing. It's going to be the magical thing for this one voice, this style of voice. I can't work like that. I don't have the time or the budget to do that. Like for every single voice, try out a million different things. Like that's crazy. I'm about the songs. I'm about making songs. So let's find the mics that can do everything well. That's what I search for. And that's why I wanted to piggyback off the 935, because, our room you can't see it, but it's very live. It's huge. It's a 800 square foot room. It's, you know, we have 13-foot ceilings. It's very loud. It's a very, very loud room. And we do a lot of scratch tracks. You know, we jam in there. There's the drums are really loud. And the worst thing, as you guys know, you know, in the front of house world or in a bleeding room, are cymbals. They get so loud. They take over everything, right? So it was such a hustle. It was such a grind to find like the perfect mic that you can put for a scratch vocal out in the room that won't interfere with the cymbals or won't interfere with everything else, or just the drums. Like I want to sound like a vocal mic in the room and not another a drum room mic. And when I first got the 935, man, like, dude, it's a studio mic. It's a studio mic for $150 or whatever it is, you know. Yeah, it carries the weight of your vocalist. It does everything well. A female vocal, a male vocal, a yelly vocal, a soft vocal, and it's so direct. It rejects really well. You know, we did a during the pandemic, we did a live stream series here called Live Studio 4, a lot of cool artists with the guys in Circa, with, you know, Bart T. Strange, with Menzingers. And that was going to be, I knew that was going to be a problem. We were going to live stream this, but our room sounds livelier than a venue, you know, because it's so responsive. You know, this mic choice is going to be very, very important. I'm like, yo, the 935 is going to do it. And after we got it, we're like, dude, it sounds like a record. It sounds so good. We start putting out the records, you know, even the scratch with the main vocal having all the drums bleed into it, but it just sounded so musical. So I think me being, again, an inherently pretty lazy person, I just want the mic to work for the music, right? I don't want to have to go hunting. Like that sucks. Like you're working on a song, you're writing a song with someone, you're producing a beat, you're just working on the music, and you know, you don't want to just say, oh, stop, let's try out 6 mics. No, I want to know my tools. I know what this 49 does. I know what a 935 does. And what they do is they do everything well. So anyone that goes in front of it is going to sound great, you know? So yeah, that's why I use the mics I do. That's why I use 184s on overheads. That's why I use, you know, the 87s on room mics. That's why I use a 49 on the vocal, 935 on my scratch vocal or live takes out there, you know, because I know what it's going to do and it handles everything well.
Yeah, Will brought up a good point. It's kind of whatever serves the music and serves the song. Because I've had a lot of vocalists come into the studio to record, and as soon as you put them in front of a U87, they suddenly can't sing anymore because they get really like, oh my God, it's like a super expensive microphone, you know? And I've had vocalists like that where I set them up with like just a cheap $100 dynamic mic and even like funneled their vocals and the music through a PA system. So it feels like they're in a live environment, and then he captured it that way. Because I mean, you know, a crappy performance on a $3,000 microphone is not going to serve anyone well. But and then there's other singers too who will come in and like they'll sing better because they're in front of a U87. They'll be like, oh my God, this is my time to shine. I feel like I'm in a studio and I have this legendary, you know, storied microphone in front of me, and it really kind of helps them elevate to the next level too. So it definitely goes in both directions. And as far as like what works better on what vocalists, it's like, yeah, sometimes in a project you'll have time to shoot out microphones, but usually not. And a lot of us, like Fela was saying, like in my first job, I stayed late all the time and was just trying out different microphones on different sources. And that's how I know certain mics work on certain vocalists or instruments, because I've tried all the bad ones and know which ones don't work.
Exactly.
And you kind of build heuristics after a while, especially back, you know, like when I started in 2006, 2007 professionally. I mean, there just weren't the resources that we have today on YouTube. There wasn't a mix with the masters. You couldn't sit in with like Chris Wardalgi and watch him mic someone. So it was a lot of experimentation, you know, and I think a lot of people starting out should kind of get back to that, because sometimes you find really cool things that you wouldn't try, you know? I mean, I've used some weird microphones on things, especially in the field. I was recording, it was like something loud outside, fireworks a few months ago in my backyard for a game thing. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I know the 416, the shotgun's going to sound great, but because it's my backyard and it's a pretty controlled environment, like what happens if I take my 47 FET out there and plug that in and record with that, you know? And I've never taken a 47 FET into the field because they're, you know, they're expensive microphones. You don't want them to get damaged, but it was like enough of a controlled environment where it was fine. And to be honest, like sounded freaking amazing. The way that thing handles transients is so nice. And I don't know if anyone has ever used a 47 Fed on explosions or transient heavy sounds, but I was blown away. It sounded amazing. And it kind of like ruined me because it sounded better than every other microphone I put out there in front of the source. So,
awesome.
but yeah, I would never have, thought to do that if I hadn't had the time to experiment and try things and not be afraid of failing,
Well, totally. No,
Definitely.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was
sorry.
gonna hop on as far as like being a student of audio. You have to put in your own work because you never have time to do a shootout usually, and the artist isn't even into it. So yeah, knowing what everything is gonna do ahead of time, but that's also putting in the work, doing all these gigs you don't necessarily want to do, but you do need to do the research of how everything reacts to what mic, and have an idea. Because yeah, once you're out here in the field or out on when you're on tour, it's just like boom, you just you have to know
Yeah,
how it's
especially
gonna react.
front of house, I'd imagine too, like the
Oh
lights go
yeah.
down and it's like chaos, and you have to really like know
Yeah,
everything and
I
how to
had to
dial it
know.
in.
And I was
Yeah.
so glad I had like a solid year that I did that. And I mean, like I said, it's New York again. So it's every genre, hardcore to, jazz night on a Monday, So and like I said, the 935 worked for both of those.
Yep.
Where is more of the
So
weight on? Is more of the weight on front of the house, back of house?
front of house and monitors. So front of house, I'm gonna hear what the bassist girlfriend is gonna think about, so I'm here, so whoever is out in the audience is who I'm mixing for. Then there's also a guy or a gal that's mixing for the artists on stage and what they hear in their in-ears and their wedges. So I was always taking care of what the audience heard. So I was trying to make it sound like the record. So also kind of knowing what the record sounded like to,
Mm.
Yeah.
get or if it's a cover, yeah, what does that cover sound like? How are you tweaking it to that, with those microphones that you have? So I mean that's more of like doing it every day and getting a gig where, I mean, if it is just cover bands every night, you still get to learn what works for everybody's vocal. And that's what gets you ahead of the game as far as becoming an engineer.
That's a tough gig too, because there's a lot of really bad sounding venues in New York. So I was playing a lot of gigs in New York around that time.
That's a
And
bag of
yeah,
58s and 57s. That's all you get at most venues
that's right.
in
Yeah.
New York City. So that's why that gig of being able to bring $10,000 worth of gear from another major house was such a big deal, because people were
Yeah.
like, this doesn't sound like, I was here yesterday and this sounds nothing like the house gig. And I was like,
Yeah.
so yeah, exactly. So even if it is a crappy system, you put a nice Sennheiser through it, how much better that made my mix sound than everybody else's that was using the house stuff. And I was getting tips. I was like selling recordings, like 2-track recordings,
Hustling.
because of these nicer microphones. So then I saw the hustle in it. Exactly. $10 a band. And it's 4 bands that night. I got paid more than what I got paid from the venue.
Wow.
So you have to, it's the hustle, and what we do and making yourself better in that same period.
Can we talk about it's something that came up in what you were just talking about, Fela, is not even thinking it. I don't think it registers to people about the artists hearing themselves.
Yeah.
The whole idea of the headphones and the monitors and how important that is to the overall experience. I mean, it makes sense, but can we talk a little bit more about engineering for the artists, for what the artists are hearing?
Oh, well, see, that was a key thing about having great microphones in those not so good venues. Going through the wedges and stuff, they could hear themselves. When you have the same microphone on everything from the guitar to the vocals to the overhead, you know, and that's what you have going. It just sounds like a wash of the same thing.
So you want, so their listening experience has to be
yes,
just like, or else, okay.
Yeah, so that they can really hear.
Get into
and they were
the
like,
music.
wow, and you're feeling like you're in the music more when you have these better microphones from the Sennheisers and Neumanns, and you're hearing that crispiness like you're in a record on stage. And then they feel more confident about their performance. And that's why you're there in the first place. And then they want to hire you again. Like, when are you here? And that was how I kind of built my reputation of like, every time now my bosses would be like, everybody asks for you. But it was because I was bringing in something that nobody else was bringing, and which was the gear that we're now talking about.
And I'm guessing, you know, because another thing I never even thought of was knowing the kind of music, knowing the bands. You know, we keep talking about these bands and stuff, and it's like, do you guys, when you're out there working with different bands, I mean, I'm guessing there's gonna be a time you come across a band like, I never heard them, you know, a band that's opening for somebody, or a band that you. How does it play into like what your personal tastes are, or your history with, you know, being around the music scene? How does that affect how you do your job?
You have to do your homework. You have to do your homework. You know,
Yeah.
I think we're all here. I think, you know, everyone here are here because they love music, right? You know what I mean? I don't think we're here just because we love a genre of music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a film lover. A film lover usually doesn't just love one genre of film. You know what I mean? So I think it shouldn't pertain to music as well. You know, I think people at this level, we just love music, and you know, that's why working with someone like, you know, with Lauren Hill, I'll bring her up just to talk, getting back to that monitor conversation is kind of crazy, but you know, she was a lover of music. Why I got to work with her was because she knew I can handle rock guitars. She's like, I don't want my records, I don't want my live stages to sound like another hip hop show. I want 3 guitar players up there. So I want to rip like Led Zeppelin, but have it still bump like a Mobb Deep record. You know what I mean? Like that's what she wanted. I'm like, I think I got it. You know, I think we do, because I just love music, you know. So like mixing for someone like that is definitely challenging. You know, we on the road, we're out on the road for about 5 years together, and we had 3 people do 3 different jobs, front of house, teleprompter, and monitors, and we'll all switch out every few nights. And no one ever wanted the monitor gig because she could actually hear it, because she could actually hear what's going on. And, you know, because that's her experience, is what's in her ears, even though this is not, is you have a different person, different gear, you know, throwing the mix out, you know, to her, that shows what you're giving her. And she wanted the record, just like Fela said, she wanted the record. If people want the feeling of quality music, a quality mix in her cans, in her in-ears. And I'm like, yo, dude, fucking, you know, 22 people on stage at the Blue Note, 22 people on stage at the Bowery. That's gonna be different than a record, man. You know what I mean? But that's why she's great. She demands a lot. And, you know, same thing like with the 49, we had every company also send out microphones to use live. And again, the 935 won. And because she said to me, and it stuck with me forever, and to piggyback another topic of why do we choose certain mics? Why do I choose certain mics? Because it sounds like her. That's what she said. This sounds like me. This has my mid-range. This sounds familiar. And I think that's very important. I think people kind of forget that. They want, you know, a lot of people, you know, obviously certain mics are magical because they do a certain dimensional thing. But, you know, when a guitar player comes in here and brings in a JCM, a $3,000 JCM Marshall head, or, you know, a $2,000 Bell Bronze snare drum, they bought that stuff because it sounds like the stuff. So they want the recording to sound like the stuff they just spent $3,000 on. So that's where, you know, we chose our mics. We chose what we use to represent the source well. You know, it sounds pretty simple, but it's not, you know, because you have to be able to navigate it, you know, but, you know, it's pretty simple in the end, you know, but yeah, it's kind of crazy experience with Miss Hill. I feel like a lot of these, where I ended up sticking with a lot of Neumann and Sanders and stuff was working with Miss Hill on the live range, because it was a monster, you know, mixing 22 people in a night, you know, is crazy. And that's where you learn your chops. That's when it came back to the studio. Oh yeah, you multi-track with 4 dudes playing 2 guitars, like that's easy compared to that. So
exactly.
yeah.
All right, good. So you guys have the perfect qualifications then for my next question. Say you don't have a 22-person band on stage, home studio engineer, you have somebody who doesn't have the big budget, maybe is just getting their feet wet in the game. But you talked about it a couple times now, Will. You want that mic that's going to do everything, right? Can you guys throw out a couple of your top picks for mics that are going to do everything for the person who doesn't have the budget to
All right.
just say, okay, which mic do I want to use today?
All right, can I, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just because I grew up, I've been broke my entire life, so that I can answer this question accurately. Yeah, it's easy. It's easy. Even on records I do today, on records with giant budgets, we're still using very inexpensive mics because it's not about the gear. It's about what you do with the gear. And obviously you have to pick, like I said before, gear that represents the source well. I posted a picture of a drum setup last Friday, and it was a crazy drum setup. And everyone was like, dude, I can't believe how simple your mic selection is. I'm like, dude, that's what it is. It's about the song, it's about the performance, and these mics are classics for a reason. A big one, especially for guys recording rock music at home or guitars or even drums, is the Sennheiser 421. That is a mic that should be in everyone's locker, especially a home recording locker. It's a jack of all trades. I remember doing a session when I was 18 with Bon Jovi, and I was checked out his mic selection on his kit. I'm like, oh crap, he just has a 421 in his kick drum. I'm like, damn, that's crazy. That's kind of old school. I'm like, yeah, because it sounds good. And he had a 421 on the guitar. And then on another session, he had a 421 on the vocals. I'm like, yo, this is crazy. And then same thing when I did a Title Fight record, it was the same thing. We used a 421 kind of everywhere, and it's a fairly inexpensive mic for what it does. It's a classic for a reason. And another one on the condenser side, because I have a lot of my artists that I work with that record at home, do demos at home. Be like, dude, for like $1,000 or less, or like or whatever, something that can do something similar to what we do in the studio. I'm like, I actually don't know how much these cost now, but I know growing up they weren't too bad, especially on the secondary market. But I always thought they were relatively well. One of the best bang for the bucks is the TLM 103. I don't care what people say. You find those at the highest end of studios, because without this transformerless mic, they handle SPL so well. Even Taylor Swift used it on 1989. You know what I mean? And I use it on I've used it on so many of my yellier vocals, like more aggressive vocals, because not every mic can handle such high SPL. I can put that thing in front of a guitar amp and without pad, and it rocks. So the 103 is one of those condensers that you won't break the bank, but it's worth saving up for someone without the craziest budgets, because you're going to use it on so much. It's a magical mic.
Yeah, the 103, that was kind of our go-to voiceover mic too when I worked in post. I would say 90% of the voiceover sessions we would grab the 103.
Awesome.
Over the U87 oftentimes too.
Wow. It's very clear. Without the transformer, just a lot of the moneyness you'll find in working with variable vocalists just goes away. It just does the work for you. So it's a very, very easy grab to go-to mic, and for how much it costs, for the price range it's in, I'll pick that mic over mics 10 times as much.
Yeah, for sure. I would say for me, like for a home studio owner, breaking it down into 3 sets of microphones, I would definitely get a great dynamic mic like the 421, because you can use it on snare, kick drum, bass amps, anything that has sharp transients it's great at. Also vocals. I would then probably get like a pair of small diaphragm pencil condensers. I'm using the KM 184s. I use them for drum overheads, and they're sweet microphones, and they sound great on acoustic guitar and all kinds of like live sources too, like strings or cello, they kind of work on everything. And not really a mic I'd choose for vocals or a guitar amp, but for basically everything else, they're great. And I definitely would recommend getting a stereo pair of them I know Sennheiser makes, I think it's what the 914s are the pencil condensers that Sennheiser makes.
They're solid. They're very
Yeah,
solid.
those are good.
Yeah.
I haven't used those, but I'm sure they're very, very similar to the KM84s. And then I would definitely sprint for one really, like Will was saying, one high quality, large diaphragm condenser microphone. For me, I would choose the TLM 67, which is like the solid state 67 without the tube. I feel like that the 67s just sound great on so many vocalists. I think you could put a 67 in front of like basically any vocalist and get a really amazing result. And they look super cool. They look like a classic Neumann studio microphone. They sound amazing. Definitely like save your pennies and get one of those. Just get one nice condenser mic and you'll get so much mileage out of that. And you can use it for other sources too. I mean, I use the
Incredible mic.
67, the TLM 67 all the time on guitar amps, along with the 421. That's like one of my favorite, secondary mics on a guitar cabinet too.
I thought we were talking affordable, Chris. Damn.
Yeah.
Oh, the TLM 67, I think is like $1,500, isn't it? Not the
is it?
reissue one.
That's
I guess
Yeah,
it's all
That's
relative,
awesome.
right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
you
you
know,
don't need the $5,000 tube one. Get the solid
Yeah.
state one.
Well, Will, you talked earlier about saving, saved your pennies up and you
Yeah.
get, and I can't tell you, and again, I'll stress this, I'm not an audio person, but because of where I work and what I do, I had somebody come up to me recently who's starting a podcast and was asking about microphones and everything. It's like, I'm throwing out like $300-$400 mic options. And he's like, yeah, I'm not sure I want to make that investment. I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, that's like, kind of on the very low end. That's not really an investment, but audio is so important. And I don't think you can stress that enough, how important audio is. If all you guys video cut out right now and we still had good audio,
Yep.
people would keep listening.
Yep.
But if it's just, we're probably going to get a good 3 seconds before someone's like, something happened. How was my fake
That was
voiceover?
great. That was great.
But that it is a great point to make, and it's like it's worth the investment. I think sounding good is such a, obviously with what you guys do, it's a no-brainer. But
it's interesting kind of working so much with picture, with film and games, especially because so oftentimes I'll get a video from a game designer or an animator, and there's a character and he's doing a super cool thing and it looks awesome, but it just doesn't, there's no weight to it. And then as soon as you put the sounds in there, like that gives the animation and the visual like all the weight, and you can really communicate that through the sound.
Yeah, sounds, you have to invest. It's like any business, right? You have to invest in your craft, at least something. Again, saving up for a TLM 103 or 67, it sucks for a bit, but what you get back is so much. Like you said, audio is kind of paramount, on the technical side. I was lucky enough to work with a really cool promotion company who did, huge feature, live events, video live events. And we're working on our live stream here during the pandemic. And, and they were like, this is going to be successful, Will, because you're doing it and it's going to sound great. It's like, it can look bad, but if it sounds great, it's going to be successful. If it looks awesome and sounds lo-fi and shitty, it doesn't work. You know what I mean? It's like having a hi-fi video, having a hi-fi video with lo-fi music, it doesn't work. You can go the other way. You know what I mean? You have an awesome hi-fi music with lo-fi video, and like that's a vibe, because that audio experience is so important. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think investing enough into your audio is key if you're going to get into it, even if you're doing the home thing, just saving up. I remember I sold my first custom snare drum. I'm a drummer by trade, and I sold my first custom snare drum when I was 19 to pay for half of the TLM 103. I really want that snare drum back. If someone has it out there, it's a blue custom Orange County snare drum that I bought. It was really tacky, but I loved it. I sold it because I was like, yo, I'm getting into production. I need to do this. I need to make this jump. The 103 kind of changed my life. And for the $1,000 or $1,200 it cost at that point, I've used it on hundreds of records since, hundreds of songs, so it's it kind of paid back in in such a large amount, so I'm very grateful.
I gotta flip the
yeah.
script on you guys real quick.
Yeah.
So we've been talking mic heavy, but what about the other side? If I can't hear it good, and for people like me who love music, but I don't know what the hell I'm doing on the mixing side, on the engineering side, but I want to hear it good. Isn't that just as important? Let's talk about Sennheiser headphones. What's you
Ooh.
guys' experience? Is there any specific brand that are not brand, but model that people like me should be looking at? I want the best sound. I want to hear my music as it's meant, right? You guys are engineering music for people to hear it just as well, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think the Sennheiser HD ones, the 280s, are phenomenal. Those are my go-to ones for working in the field when I'm recording sound effects outside. And they just sound great. Never had them fail. They're not expensive. That would be probably my pick.
Yeah, I'm gonna double that. I have them right here because
Yeah,
I've
nice.
used I've gone through every pair of headphones in the studio. We need, other than it's sounding great, we also need to be durable because dudes they like to listen to it loud in here, especially when you have
Yeah.
drums in the room.
Yeah, and they attach nicely to the
Exactly.
head
It
because those
isolates
guys are. Yeah, it's.
they isolate so well.
Yeah.
And the 280s have been the one to really kind of keep up, and they're very, very accurate. They're very accurate. That's the thing, with monitors, with headphones. I tell everyone, really don't, when people ask, yo, what monitors should I use? What monitor should I get? I have opinions. But I say, yo, when we're talking about budget, if you have something, first of all, if you have it at home right now, learn it. Listen to Steely Dan on them, listen to Mobb Deep on them, listen to, Turnstile on them, like listen to every genre of music and really, really understand your monitors and your headphones. That's the key. A lot of people, you can have a $10,000 pair of speakers or, a $3,000 pair of headphones, and you can still mix it poorly because you just don't understand that equipment. So learn your headphones. These Neumann cans are amazing. They're awesome. The Sennheisers I just showed are awesome. But again, most of it's because I learned them. Obviously, they're easier to learn when they're very balanced, like these headphones are. But that's a big piece of advice I got to give to people. People sweat it so much. One of my good pals who mixed a lot of great records, who just did, they're rolling out the big Wonder Years record right now. But Steve Evans, he's what mixes on like $1,000 pair of monitors. You know what I mean? Or people are like, yo, shouldn't you be using this? Like, dude, this is what I know. And I think that is the difference versus versus a microphone. It's a little more subjective to the person, because it's how you use them, right? A mic, if I put a mic up on the same preamp with the same vocalist and you do it, it's probably going to sound about the same, you know what I mean, right? Close enough, but what you do with the speakers, what you do with the headphones, it's going to be a lot different than what I do with the headphones, you know what I mean? Because we know them differently. So I think it's your relationship with the headphones is most important, but you have to find very, very balanced and accurate headphones, and which Neumann and Sennheiser are kind of kings at. This is
What are you using now, Will?
These are what are these? The Neumann, the NDH 30s, the 30s. They're awesome.
Those are what I'm using now too in the studio.
They're
those are awesome.
They're balanced. They isolate really well. They're open back and they have a lot of air to it. I can't use them in the live room because it's gonna be so loud in there, and that's when I use the HDs, the Sennheisers.
It's definitely for mixing.
Yeah, for to reference a mix, they're awesome.
Yeah, I've been using those too recently just to kind of check my mixes in the low end, because it's always consistent. I mean, you could be in like the worst room in the world, and if you have a good set of, especially open back headphones like those, you can really kind of get your low end dialed in once you learn the headphones well.
Yeah. All right, I got to ask a dumb question here. What open back? What are you guys referring to when you say open back headphones?
Who wants to take this one?
So there's basically closed back headphones, which are literally closed, and it contains the sound within your ears. And those are the most common ones that you see, and those are great for musicians who are tracking in the studio because there's not any bleed. You're not going to get feedback. Open back ones, they can breathe a bit better. So I believe that they function more like studio monitors do, like an actual speaker. It's like almost like putting a speaker up against your ear versus having a headphone where you have all that weird like headphone resonance, especially in the low end. And I think that's why the open back ones give a more clear bass representation.
Yeah, it's hard to
and
explain.
Are great for mixing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to explain without using the word in a definition, but they're open. You know what I mean? They're open, and they have a lot of air to it. Like Chris said, you know, they function like studio monitors because you feel distance, you feel depth with the open backs, and that's why they're a lot more popular to use in the mix in mixing. And the closed back when you need isolation, especially when you're jamming with other people, when you have a live room where you're playing with other people. You know, open backs are kind of, you know, they get a little rough, but closed back is the way to go in those instances, because you need the isolation, you need that intimacy. Whereas, you know, for mixing, you need the air, you need that space. You know, that's how you get low end to be very, very consistent. Obviously HD, you get great low end, but with open backs, it just can't compete with the accuracy of open backs, especially in the low end.
So would it be like me using noise canceling headphones and turning the noise cancellation on and off and hearing like that, almost like the white noise versus having everything locked out? Is it similar to that, or?
Similar, the science is different, but it's similar. It's a similar,
like same effect.
Yeah, similar effect. But
like when I yell into the microphone and I have no idea because I can't hear. Like I hate not knowing how loud I'm talking.
Yeah, I think you get a same, you know, sensation. You know, when you take off the noise, you know, I never have the noise cancel completely on because, you know, it feels crazy. That's not what music feels like to me, right? You know, for it to feel that sterile. But yeah, the open backs, you just get a little more air, a little more life out of it.
It's crazy. It's starting to piece together. And that's honestly why I love doing these, because you learn so much. And it's like you guys are just talking about what you do and you're just talking amongst each other. And people like me are picking up little things. Like I've never heard the term how you use headphones. I'm like, wait, just put them on and play. And it's like, and then as you guys talk, I'm like, oh, there's a whole world that I don't even know about.
So basically, yeah, those headphones that Will has on, you would just keep it in your control room, and then the Sennheisers just stay in the tracking room. It's like they don't even move.
So it's like multiple. So you guys have like mics for different things, headphones for different things.
Headphones for different things. Yeah, I mean, I use the Neumann KH 120s. Which I mean, I don't even need a subwoofer for those things. I mean, they're great as our source to know what's going on there, and then to now jump on the headphones as well. Like those two things kind of go together in the same room, you know. So
yeah,
thinking about how your layout of your rooms are going to be, that's kind of how it'll go down.
I want to throw a little bonus question in here. Have you guys used any of these products in a way, or any Sennheiser Neumann products in a way that they're not particularly designed for? Have you ever, you know, we all know that, you know, sometimes people, I'm a huge Jimi Hendrix fan, and it's like Jimi Hendrix. It's like when you listen to Jimi Hendrix, you hear stuff and you're like, wait, is it supposed to be like that? Or is it like just bad, you know, an old bad recording? Or, you know, Hendrix pushed the limits of what you could do or what people were doing at the time. Have you guys ever used these products in a way for desired effect, experimented, if you will? And if you have, talk about that experience. You know, was it something that worked out good, or was something like, it didn't really work out for me?
I'm pretty sure, like, when it comes to field recording, at least, and getting sound effects, most of the mic placements are kind of experimental in the way that I don't think the Sennheisers were designed to be shot at or maybe like blown up. But we do put, like, you know, 421s close to high SPL sources and really kind of see how much SPL they can actually take. Because I think they're rated at like 140 or 150, and if you're recording like 10 sticks of dynamite or thermite or something super loud, you're looking at like 160 plus SPL, but it's not sustained. It's just like a pop, you know? So I would say, and we've definitely blown up several dynamic microphones in experimental situations like that while recording. But or other times, like I was recording like bullet impacts one time, and just took a crappy microphone. I'm not sure if it was a Sennheiser. I think it was some kind of cheap shotgun, and I put it in the trunk of a car of trunk of a car we were shooting at, and the blimp got hit with a bullet, and it completely took out the microphone. But the sound we got was like super cool for that. It sounded really scary. Like you could hear the bullet like bouncing around in the trunk of the car. It was crazy sounding. So yeah, we do a lot of experimental, weird miking things like that in the field for sure. And it's just like that one time, that one magic thing happens, and then it becomes like a cool signature sound, and you can use that source when you're doing sound design for so many cool things.
I love that. I
Yeah,
love that.
I think in especially doing a lot of rock records, and I work with a lot of, they're all awesome and very, very, very creative and influential artists, but a lot of them most of them are crazy. You're just crazy when you're making that type of music, and as are all of us. But distortion's a big thing. Distortion's been in for the last 15 years. You know what I mean? People like distortion tape ever since Trent Reznor. The story coming into SSL, like everybody wants that sound. And people like choked up stuff. So us slamming tones into really expensive condenser microphones, something that if you saw a 149 in front of a guitar cab spitting out 120 dB, you would be like, yo, put that away. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? That has happened before. But it's there's no rules. That's what I tell everyone. There's no rules here. There's no rules. And it's just like recently I've been looking for the perfect snare drum mic for me, because I recently became a partner with one of my favorite drum companies called Blackwood Custom Drum Percussion. And I love drums, and I'm like, man, we're doing these drum demos. I'm like, yo, none of this really sounds like the drum. You know what I mean? Like, all these classic, the $100 dynamic, microphones we all know. We're like, yo, this ain't it. This ain't it for you. It sounds good, but I want the best representation of the drum. And I talked to a lot of people. I was like, yo, do you have do you have some Sennheiser stuff like a 441? I'm like, wait, do I have a 441? I'm like, I do have a 441. It's like, yo, that's a vocal mic. Like that's a handheld vocal mic. It's like, yo, put that on the snare. You're gonna love the brightness. I was like, it's gonna clip a little bit, but it's going to be a good clip. I'm like, all right, put it up. That's what I've been using for the last year. It's like, just there's no rules. Just try stuff and have fun. There's no rules in rock and roll, man. Just go at it.
I love that.
Yeah.
There's
I
always
love
that
that.
fine line too between like the bad distortion and the good distortion. It's
I crossed it a lot.
hard to walk that line. And that's another thing where I think experimenting goes a long way too, because a lot of the times, with transient material like snare drums, kick drums, or explosions, gunshots, whatever, you're really driving the mic preamp quite hard and relying on the limiters to kind of chop off some of the peaks on those sounds, to get the tones you're after. And like I'll often record a kick or snare, and I have a really old 70s Yamaha console, but it's got tons of transformers and op amps in it, and it's fun to just like crank the gain and hit the op amp super hard and just blow the top off that peak, and you get a really not compressed sound, but a really harmonically rich sound that just sounds like a record sometimes, hopefully.
So everyone's out here, everyone trusts you guys. Why do you guys trust Sennheiser Neumann products? I mean, what is it? What drew you them? There's a lot of options out there. Why Sennheiser Neumann?
We put it against other things. I mean, it's our job to know what works best. And if we don't know what works best, we don't have a job. If we don't know what sounds good to the human ear, whether that's music, sound design, podcast, we're not working. So that was very important. I think that's more so in the early stages of your career, because you don't know anything. So I mean, you really have to just get out there and work wherever you can to get this knowledge of these different microphones if you don't have money. Because I mean, I didn't come from money either. It was like I had to get it through other, working other places that have that kind of mic, that dream mic list. You may need to, look at it. It's on people, it's online. Maybe you want to go to the studio that has that dream list and get to know those products and know for sure, because you're making a living off of your ears essentially.
Yeah. Again, I do this, just like these guys. I do this every day. I do this every day. You know, I don't think anyone's clocked in more hours on a Neve 8048 behind me in the last 20 years than anyone. I'm in the studio 14 hours a day, every damn day. I just started to get a day off a week, you know, recently. You know, my wife made me, and it was awesome and very healthy for us and me. And in that schedule, there's no time for crap. There's no time for BS, man. It's you need the gear that's going to work. You know, we need the gear that's going to work, that you can count on. And the brand Sennheiser Neumann is classic for a reason. I wear Nikes for a reason. I go buy Nikes for a reason, you know, because I know what I'm getting. I'm gonna count on it. And not only that, through the years of comparing, you know what I mean, being lucky, you know, just like the other said, you know, being lucky to shoot it out against other stuff. It was tried and true, man. Like it is a classic for a reason. The test, shooting out the 149 against other classic mics. At that point in my life, I could have got any condenser mic I wanted in the world. I went with a 149 because it was tried and true, and it lived up to the hype. It lived up to the classic brand. It lived up to it. It was the Nike. It was the Rolex. You know what I mean? It was the king to me. And Sennheiser, the same thing. You know, just like we're talking about these headphones. You know, I was tired because, you know, I had a conversation with our Sennheiser rep. I'm like, yo, these other brands, these other headphones, they keep breaking. like I keep sending them back. They keep breaking. And she's like, I got you. Use it. The 280s. I got you. I promise you, they're going to be good, and they're going to handle your situation a lot better. Everyone that tracks in my studio uses the HDs. Every single person in them in the studio uses them, and it just tells you it's a classic. It's reliable. Reliability is key, man. It sounds like I'm selling a Toyota or something, but it's reliable, and it lasts forever, and it's accurate and represents the music well. It represents the soul of the music. That's what I care about the most. Does it represent the source and the song well? And it does. It's been for, you know, a billion years.
Yeah, reliability is a big thing for us too. For me, with field recording at least, like I know the 416 is going to work, the shotgun's going to work on pretty much anything. And when you're in a situation where you're on a film set, or you're in a situation where you're on a shooting, you're doing things like lighting off explosives that are really expensive. I mean, you just can't really blow a take. So I do try to get lots of coverage with different microphones for that reason, but I know that Sennheisers can take a large amount of SPL, and I know they're going to work later on when it comes to doing the sound design portion of my job. And they're just reliable. Yeah, I've had a lot of those HD 280 headphones get like super sweaty in the field and dirty and just like covered in mud and dirt, and I've never had a pair break on me, which is good, because if that happened and you're, you know, a mile away from your base camp because you're out like way out there recording weird reflections or something of gunshots, you know, you can't just like call the shoot to go get another pair of headphones. So
Chris,
it's important that stuff. What's
your
that?
Life sounds awesome. Your life sounds awesome, dude. Can
I know, right?
For a day?
Seriously, I'm like, we gotta extend this another hour.
I'm in the studio like 90% of the time, and then the other 10% of the time I'm doing like extremely dangerous field recording. So
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, fireworks.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't know which of the three you has the
Explosions.
best job.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah, and I mean, same
musicians and drummers are dangerous too. Sorry, go ahead.
exactly. Right out with like front of house, and when you're doing concerts, you're in the middle of nowhere in Italy.
Yeah.
You need to have, you know, whatever you have, it has to work. So yeah, I mean, it's I've been all around the world with these microphones, and yes, it's been spot on. So yeah.
Wonderful. So we're gonna go a little off the beaten path for this final question here.
Love it.
How the heck do I set the bass and treble in the car? Age-old question. And we're all over the place. We're listening to classic rock, then we got some Mobb Deep, then we might have some salsa merengue for my wife. How do you set the audio?
Keep it
It's
flat.
Yo,
there's only one right answer to this question, and it's no matter what you do, you have to reset it to the way your wife had it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a flat type of person because you don't know who's gonna be messing with this. So my rule is, no one touch it because I have to reference
Yeah.
my mixes on it, and it has to sound the same. It just has to be consistent. I just
But
need
that's what the
consistent.
engineer meant to put out
Yeah.
there was what it is at 0. So I'm listening to what Will wants me to hear at 0. You know,
So
like
flat. Okay.
flat is how that's the engineer, because you're just adding to my mix.
I'm gonna tell
Or-
you, everybody who doesn't work in the audio industry is screwing it up, because I've been screwing it up. When did I get my license? 30 years.
I hard agree, but I'll also say, as long as you keep it consistent, especially if you're working the audio side, like I said
Yeah.
earlier about learning your headphones and learning your studio monitors. And every time I drop a mix, I listen to on my headphones, I listen to, obviously on the speakers, and I go in my car and I listen to on the iPhone earbuds, and on the actual raw iPhone speaker. That's how I reference every single mix. If you start changing stuff around on what you're listening to, then how are you learning it? Then you don't even know what it's doing. You know
You
what I
need a
mean?
baseline.
You need a baseline. So yeah, you might pull up the treble a little bit, drop the low mids a little bit. But if you're gonna do that, then leave it there. Then leave it there forever. At least it's consistent. But
then if your wife gets into the car,
exactly,
then
exactly. So my
that's
rule's
why I'm
flat.
like, I try and keep
Yeah.
it at flat, so I'll know for my thing that this is
Okay.
what
Exactly. Yeah,
So
you need
flat.
consistency.
Yeah, the
Flat.
consistency.
Consistency is
Yes.
key. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So for everybody who sits outside my window at 3 a.m. every summer here in the Bronx, flatten that EQ out. No, this
They're not gonna
was
listen.
awesome. I swear, man. I really do have the best job. Although I don't know, Chris kind of made me. I don't
Chris.
ever have shots and dynamite but no, this was super awesome. I want to send a huge thank you to all of you for joining me for the last hour. I really learned so much when I have experts on, and I think I learned an extra amount of information today. And I don't even think you guys were just talking. It wasn't even like you guys were trying to educate, which is great. I mean, you guys are just talking about what you do, and it really gives people like me an appreciation for everything that we hear, whether it's watching a movie, whether it's listening to music or going to a live performance. There's things in each of those genres that I didn't realize plays into it. And I think people don't really understand how important the jobs that you guys are doing are. So huge thank you to all of you. Sennheiser Neumann, obviously, for sponsoring this event. Huge thank you to everybody over there behind the scenes at Sennheiser and Neumann for making this happen. But any last words from you guys? Now they're quiet. Now they don't want to talk.
Just get some good tools and make music. Let's keep the business good. You know what I mean? Let's make some music. Just inspire
what's the
people.
website to your studio? Like how do we get in touch with you, Will?
We're talking
There we
about
go.
me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's just my name. Just willyip.com is
Okay.
is my name. But yeah, I just and I'm very grateful for Neumann, Sennheiser, and B&H, for people that help put inspiring gear out there, because that's how you make inspiring music. Is a big part of it. So I'm grateful, and I just hope people got a bit of information, useful information out of this, so that they can kind of inspire other people with it.
Same
Definitely.
here. Fela again with oneofOneProductions.com. You can check out some of our examples of how we use the Sennheiser stuff. Pretty much everything that comes out of this studio, whether it's the headphones, the monitors, microphones, we're here for it. And we're, if you're in the content creation game, and which we all are, if you touch audio, you're a content creator. So get good at it, find out what works, and use the best things out there. So just keep on at it, and follow us. We're out on Facebook, Instagram, all of that kind of stuff. Check us out.
I would
Awesome.
say, from a sound design and recorders perspective, just get any recording device you can, whether it's like a Zoom handheld recorder or if it's a shotgun, a Sennheiser shotgun. Just get out there in the field and start recording. Don't be afraid to experiment, and just listen. and watch as many YouTube videos you can because there's lots of great information out there.
Yes,
And just put the time in. Yeah,
Mhm.
put the time in and do the work.
Definitely. And any social handles or websites to drop, Chris?
Yeah, you can check out some of my mixing work that I'm doing right now at hereticsound.com.
Wonderful. We're going to get those all dropped into the comment section for everybody joining us on the live simulcasts that are going on. Again, a huge thank you to all of our guests and obviously to our sponsors and our viewers who are watching, listening. Chris, if you ever need gunshots, if you want to go out in the field, think I know a neighborhood that might
Nice.
come visit me here if you ever make it back to New York. But no, again,
Definitely will.
huge thank you to all of you guys for joining us. But that's all we got for you guys today. You're
Awesome.
gonna have to go
Thank
get
you,
your
guys.
own audio advice after we shut this down. But a huge thank you to our experts here. Another rendition of the B&H virtual event space is now in the books. Catch y'all next time.